Dr. Lambert. Hi, thanks for being here.
Thank you, Eleni. It's wonderful to be here.
It's an honor to be here, sharing this space and meeting you. And I'm excited to dive into, why it is that you decided to introduce EFT into schools.
I actually used to be a primary school teacher myself, and now I work as a psychologist in clinical practice. And I'm seeing far too many young people come into the clinic with anxiety, and as the young people are older, perhaps moving into symptoms like depression, and then having to deal with the consequences of that with families. I just think it's quite serious that young people are dealing with these heavy issues. And I've been thinking, from the group work that I've done, often using tapping and with the positive outcomes, I wondered why we may not try this with primary school students and equip them with some tools at the very young age that may help them when they're feeling sad or angry or upset. The schools are doing wonderful things already, and tapping is another tool, and it's an easy one. So from my school teacher's perspective, I thought this is very doable as a class technique. And what if we were to try it? What would happen? I have prepared a few slides. So do you want me to go ahead and show those slides now?
Oh, okay. Yes, please.
So I think underpinning it all is my belief that only if a child feels right can he think right. And this is very pertinent for young people in schools. I think people might be interested in the research questions. What did I go ahead to investigate? I had 6 questions. The first one, what are the perceptions of Year 5 and Year 6 students related to tapping? This was the age group that I focused on because Year 5 and Year 6 is at the top of the primary elementary school in Australia. And I required students to have some level of emotional language to be able to work with the techniques and conduct the research. The second question I asked was, is EFT tapping effective for reducing anxiety and distress in Year 5 and Year 6 students? The third question, what are the perceptions of teachers related to using EFT? Because it's one thing to work with students, but if the teachers aren't on board, it's not going to go anywhere in schools. So we needed to use the teachers within the research and have them as participants also. The other questions within that main question, how difficult is it? This is what the teachers will be wanting to know. Is it manageable? Because teachers here in Australia, I think around the world, are pretty well overburdened.
Yeah.
And it's another thing to do. What's the effect of using EFT with the class in terms of student behaviour, performance, and their concentration? Do teachers themselves feel any difference in their own emotional, cognitive, and motivational states after tapping? The fourth question, is EFT effective as a class activity? The fifth question, does EFT support the social and emotional learning curriculum? Again, if it doesn't support the curriculum, there's no point in taking it further. And we're not going to know that until we conduct the research to see how it fits in and what's the sort of language, what are the concepts involved in rolling out tapping in the classroom. And from that experiential platform, we can decide if it does fit within the social and emotional learning curriculum. The sixth question, my final research question for this study was, are the skills learned in EFT applied by students or teachers outside the classroom setting? I was curious to know, are these skills transferable to other contexts? So they were my 6 questions. So that was my 3-year PhD study at Charles Darwin University. It kept me going for a little while. And I engaged 8 classes of students in Darwin, Northern Territory schools. How did I conduct this research? How did I get into schools and do it? Firstly, I undertook teacher training sessions. So I delivered 2 training sessions after school. Like in their staff meeting times, teacher times are precious. Outside of class, they have so many activities and administration tasks that they have to perform. So schools and teachers were gracious enough to allow me some time after school. So we thought what was manageable was 1 hour, and we had those 2 sessions 1 week apart. Then we engaged the students. The whole tapping research was 4 weeks of tapping 3 times a day. And we did that in 2 stages. Stage 1 was in term 2. And then in term 3, we came back and we did it again for another 4 weeks. We had student tapping books that I designed so students could record their tapping number before and after tapping and write any comments they might want to as to how they felt. How did the tapping have them feel? And anything they wanted to write, they were welcome to put in those books. I administered some psychological anxiety tests pre and post the interventions, and at a 10-week follow-up time after we completed the 2 stages of tapping. We had a break. It was like the study's finished, but then I came back into schools and with those students again, gave them another anxiety test to see if the results were held or there were any changes. The social and emotional lesson was presented by me, the researcher, that introduced the whole tapping in the classroom. So I went into each of the 8 classes and delivered a social and wellbeing lesson, talking about feeling words, the language that we might use for tapping. Why would we want to see if tapping works? Do they ever feel sad or bad? And brainstorming a whole lot of those feeling words and grouping them into whether they're anxiety words or whether they're feeling yucky words or whether they're fun and feeling great words. That was a big lesson really in each of the classes that introduced the whole tapping. This is what we're going to do now. And after each tapping stage, stage 1 and stage 2, I conducted interviews with both students and teachers to see how they felt. The whole PhD study was a mixed method study, so it involved both quantitative and qualitative methods of investigating the research questions. Getting into the intervention protocol, what did we actually use with the students? We used the technique that I learned from Gary Craig when I originally learned the technique, and it involved the short version of tapping. Originally, Gary Craig didn't use the top of the head, but I've incorporated that with the students. And the side of the hand, the karate chop, where we put the story of how we feel. The language I used with the students, and this was part of their lesson as well, introducing the whole tapping to them, even though I feel anxious, or even though I feel not great, or even though I feel great. They could choose one of those 3 words so that they didn't have to go searching for the absolute correct word to what matched their feeling. They could write anything they liked in their tapping books, and we gained greater clarity or understanding about how they were feeling from those books. What did we find? And I've borrowed this infographic from Peter Stapleton's evidence-based-EFT.com website. So students found EFT effective. We found that there was improvement in focus and concentration, and we found students generally and teachers felt reduced physical discomfort. So they actually felt better physically. There were three main themes that emerged as part of the qualitative work. Tapping resulted in change. Changes might have been affective, cognitive, and physical. The second main theme, tapping skills were transferable to other contexts, and students were seen tapping around the classroom or out in the playground, and they reported to me they might have tapped at home as well. Tapping was not effective. On each occasion it was used, and this wasn't a surprising outcome. We don't expect 100% effectiveness from anything.
Yeah.
So I thought you might like to hear from the students directly. Maddie said, it helps calm me down when I'm angry. In the afternoon, just after recess, it's better because it's later in the day. And when it's later in the day, you feel a bit tired. You get angry and sad easier. So it helps you calm down when you do it. Cedric said, I used it for spelling tests, like tests or something. It's calmed me down when I do my tests and all that. Because I'm calm, I can get more stuff done. Cognitive change, confidence and academic focus. Geraldine said, we did the tapping and then we did the work. And I find out because when we do our work, it's kind of confusing and frustrating. And then when we were tapping, it was much easier to focus on things. And the next area of change, physical change, Anne said, I wasn't feeling too well and tapping made me feel less sick in the stomach. Hendrik said, on sports day, I was nervous before my race and I started tapping and the butterflies went away. I was more confident saying like, I can do this instead of I'm going to lose. And what did the teachers say? I've just dot pointed these. It's a positive thing. It was calming for the students. They found the classes less noisy. They preferred the independent style that we moved on to in stage 2, where students just did tapping for themselves, not as a whole class activity. They noticed changes in behaviour. They said it builds an openness to social and emotional responses and awareness because they're actually focusing on it when they're doing the tapping. It gives students permission to have and own their own feelings, and teachers thought that was important. It's an opportunity for them to be reflective and write personally. That was their opinion about the books that the students used. They also said it was beneficial for all grades. They noticed students tapping at other times, sometimes secretly, and I did teach them a secret form of tapping where they just tapped on their fingers. Teachers said it was beneficial for special needs students. There were many of those in the study. We didn't identify them specifically, but teachers, when they were interviewed, they pointed that out. Some students didn't want to participate, not surprising, and they felt peer pressure either for tapping, into doing the tapping, or against the tapping. That's just a quick summary. I'm pleased to say that the article that was written about this research has been published in the Australian Journal of Teacher Education that outlines the study in an article form and in the peer-reviewed journal.
Amazing, amazing. And I'll include the article, the link below, the link to the article below.
Terrific. I did interview school principals as well, and they were very positive about it. And most of the schools went on to continue tapping in the schools and asked me to come back to train the other teachers and the specialist teachers so that it could be right across the school rather than just year 5 and year 6. So that was a great outcome.
Yeah, and it goes to show, because a lot of times with initiatives, at least here in England and Europe, I've noticed that it might be, you know, the fizzle and pop kind of, where it's like you go and there's excitement and then it just kind of fizzles out. So the fact that they're calling you back in and they want more and they want to have continuity here shows that actually this is something, you know, that they feel is worth investing in.
And they also noted that they would like to include the parents as well, which I had offered to do, to meet parent groups, but the schools didn't get around to arranging that. They've always got a lot on their plates.
Yeah.
But they did know that it would be really beneficial to include the parents in understanding this technique and supporting it.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Dr. Lambert. Is there anything else that you'd like to add before we wrap up?
No, but thank you for all the work you're doing. I think it's amazing and wonderful that you're able to put this together. We're able to participate and contribute in helping others know what's been going on and what's possible.